Hi. Thank you for attending today's reading. Let's begin. My friend's dad tried to pay me to get naked for him. True story. I, 26M, used to work in a pub when I was about 20 after dropping out of university. I had to pay for the rent of my student accommodation even though I wasn't living there anymore. I had moved back home with my parents to work and afford the rent whilst living at home for cheap. An older man, perhaps in his early 70s, would come in and drink with a few friends several times per week. He seemed very chatty and surprisingly interested in me when coming to the bar to order drinks. He would be quite forceful with his talk, often initiating long, drawn-out conversations with me about all sorts of things when I was trying to work. He'd ask me about myself a lot. What are my plans in life? How long do I think I'll be working in the pub? Do I have any hobbies? Things like that. It all seemed innocent enough, if not slightly annoying when I was trying to do my job and serve other customers while he carried on speaking to me. One day he asked me how old I was. I told him and he said his son was that age as well. He proceeded to ask me what school I went to. It turned out that I went to the same school as his son. He told me his son's name and it was actually one of my best friends. Someone I spent a lot of time with and had a great relationship with. In fact, just the two of us would hang out all the time. We'd make music, get high, get drunk on an almost weekly basis. After that conversation he started coming to the pub more frequently. By himself now, rather than with the group of friends that he'd usually come with. He started conversations with me more often and even started giving me tips, which is rare here. The tips steadily got bigger and bigger, to the point where it was getting pretty ridiculous and I felt bad. I'd often try to refuse the tips but he would insist until I accepted. He'd hand me the notes, then clasp his hands around mine as I took the money. He'd say things like, "You're a great barman," and, "You deserve this." It really started to feel quite creepy and as if he had an ulterior motive, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt as he seemed harmless enough. He was one of my best friend's dad after all. This persisted for a couple of months until one day he came in by himself and over the course of a few hours he had around 5 or 6 large glasses of red wine. As you can imagine, he was pretty drunk by this point. As I was walking around the pub collecting glasses, he beckoned me over to where he was sitting in a dimly lit booth in the corner of the room. He stood up and stood really close to me. He then said something along the lines of, "I've been meaning to ask you something. Now, I'm not gay. I can't stress this enough. I'm not gay. But what I do have is an appreciation for the male form. I used to have a lad who I would pay £100 per week to get naked for me. I wouldn't touch him or force him to do anything. I would just sit on the other side of the room and appreciate his body. Does this sound like something that you'd be interested in?" Quote. By this point, in a way I think I was anticipating something like this. I had even joked about it with my family prior. I said no but laughed it off. I didn't want to offend him or embarrass him, so politely refused. He then started to beg me not to tell his son. I could really see the regret and panic in his eyes. I assured him I wouldn't and he doesn't have to worry about anything. My lips are sealed. A week or so later, during a really heavy, wet storm, he came running into the pub. He was absolutely soaked and was bright red in the face with the few fine strands of hair that he had left sticking to his moist head. He was clearly flustered and in a panic. I was walking across the pub as he came in and he saw me immediately. He came over to me and said, "You haven't told him, have you?" I really hadn't, so assured him that I haven't told a soul. He seemed skeptical and kept questioning me. We went around in circles for a while, but eventually, he believed me and left. I can only imagine that perhaps my friend acted slightly off at home that day, which caused his dad to suspect I'd told him, sending him into a panicked frenzy. I never saw him again after then, and still to this day, I haven't told anyone and never will. If anything, I felt really bad for him. Their family was very Catholic, and although my friend didn't buy into it, his parents were incredibly devout, and I'm pretty sure both of them worked for the church in some capacity or another. Because of this, I could only surmise that he has been gay all his life, but because of his religion, or due to societal pressures from his youth all those years ago, he had to hide his sexuality, resulting in him getting married, having children, and going to church like a good Christian should. I couldn't potentially ruin his life and tear apart my friend's family over something like that, so I'm taking the secret to the grave with me. Thanks for reading. End of story. Next story. My classmate is obsessed with my grades, so there's a girl in my class who we'll call Andy. We've been in the same class for a year now. We've always been pretty normal with each other. But that kinda changed. After every 2-ish breaks, our class gets new places to sit in the classroom. I live in the Netherlands, so the school system there is different. So Andy got to sit in front of me. I sit next to a good friend of mine, and she sits next to a friend of hers. We sometimes help each other with homework during class, but nothing else really. Later on, she started acting a lil off. She kept asking stuff about my grades. I'm completely fine with someone asking about how I'm doing with school and what grades I get. But this just got a lil weird. She kept on asking about it. Like, almost every day. You see, until now I haven't really had any bad grades yet, even though the rest of the class has a lot of bad grades. Especially at the beginning of the school year. I guess that's why she found it interesting. Her asking about it kinda kept on going. I just answered her questions and moved on with my day. One time I was just chilling in computer class, and she just kept on asking questions if my test went well and what I got for a specific subject. This also happened today during math. But this time it was a little bit different. She asked me what I got for math. I didn't get a too high of a grade for it, but I was happy with it. Once I told her, she just started cheering. I was kinda confused because why would you cheer at that? Welp. Turned out she got a higher score than me. I really don't know why she's so obsessive about my grades, but I guess she's just comparing hers to mine. Which is, in my opinion, a lil weird since we're not close or anything like that. Anyways, this is kinda a boring story, but I still wanted to write it. Hope you enjoyed it though. I'll update the story if something interesting happens. Bye. Edit. She stopped asking about my grades. Mostly because my country went back in lockdown. So I don't really have any contact with her. I did speak to my friends that are in the same class about it. And they said she also does this to them. She was probably just curious and wanted to compare her grades to different people. At the time I wrote the story, I was pretty annoyed because she kept repeatedly asking me these things. But it's all right now. End of story. That is all for today. If you want to support my automated channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.